Hello everyone, Xeno What If here. Bring in Season 2 Part 44 of What If the Transformers Were in My Hero Academia. Link in the description of the fanfiction of this What If. Listen here YouTube. I do not own anything and this is not a scam. Chapter 86, The Finals, Stretch. Kimia Science Colony, earlier that day. Captain's log, star date, still no idea. Upon the bridge of the Kimia, Brainstorm sat in careful contemplation as he began the next entry in his log. To say that he had a sense of excitement and dread in his spark was an understatement, the main reason behind it being the fact that they were almost to their destination. We are encroaching upon the outskirts of Earth's solar system ahead of schedule. We should be there within at least 2 decacycles at this pace. Still, for as enthusiastic as I am to finally reach this planet, I am also somewhat apprehensive. From what I've discerned of Prime's message, it seems that the objective on this planet is to remain hidden from the organic populace as much as possible. Leaning back, Brainstorm craned his head up toward the ceiling. As one can imagine, that task isn't an easy one when you're piloting a craft such as this. With any luck, we can figure something out, but until then. *BWAAAM *BWAAAM Gah. Log pause. Once he stopped the recording, Brainstorm shot up off his chair and called down to his pilots. Railspike, report. Sir. Multiple points of unauthorized entry in the lower levels. Railspike brought up a holoscreen, which focused in on said area of the ship. It appears that smaller beings have used the air ducts to get through. Brainstorm sighed and shook his head. Gah, damn it, I thought that I went over this with those test subjects, they're not going to. Brain, these guys ain't pingin' on any ID board. Rapid Run piped up, noting that all of the moving red dots through the ship came up as unidentified. Looks to me like we've got lots of intruders on board. That only left the headmaster of Kimia confused. Intruders? How can there be this? BWAAAOOOOOOOMM. All of a sudden, the alarms suddenly stopped blaring, and on the screen, every single blip that had been moving through the lower levels abruptly vanished. Oh dear. Midnight Express explained. What in the world is going on now? As if to answer his question, the visual on screen changed, with Hotspot appearing there before them. Hotspot reporting in, sir. The Protectobot leader saluted. We've got the situation under control down here. All escapees have been teleported back to their science sphere. What? Escapees? Brainstorm placed his fists on his hips. Hotspot, what is going on down there? Apologies for the unexpected alarm, Brain. Hotspot bowed his head. Turns out, one of the newer groups of passengers aboard only just woke up from cryo sleep. Before any bot could get to their habitat sphere, they formed venturing parties and escaped through the air ducts. Railspike couldn't help but find that humorous. And you said that the ducts weren't a viable escape route, Brain. Brainstorm rolled his optics in response. They're not supposed to be, at least not for escaping the facility itself. He raised a hand up to Hotspot. Thanks for the update, HS. Continue your patrol as normal, though. Tell me, what species were the escapees? I believe they're the monkey people from that vegetable planet, sir. Oh, yes. We picked those rascals up not long ago. Right. Brainstorm snapped his fingers and pointed at Hotspot. Now I remember, we did ask them to take part in that experimental cryo tube testing, didn't we? Alright, I'll make sure to get a message out to them toot sweet. As you were, Hotspot. With one final nod, Hotspot vanished from the screen and Brainstorm sat down in his chair, reaching for his trusty intercom button. Attention all veggie monkeys, this is your captain, Brainstorm, speaking. It's come to my attention that a good portion of you have only recently awoken from extended relaxation and are unaware of what's going on. So first things first, congratulations. You've successfully gone through extended cryo sleep and from what I'm reading, there have been no casualties among you, meaning that the cryo tube test was a complete success. Now, if you're experiencing any side effects such as drowsiness or a bit of memory loss, please take it up with your caretaker Autobot once they arrive. However, it's also come to my attention that some of you are unaware that we are testing in space. So there it is. No conspiracy, no twist, we're in a space colony traveling the cosmos. Commonly available information that absolutely anyone would have told you if you'd bothered to be patient and waited to ask. Please stop forming groups of adventuring parties to uncover the big secret, because it's that we're in space. On that note, we look forward to your continued aid in testing our scientific discoveries aboard Kimia Science, so let's get cracking. That is all. Taking his finger off the intercom, Brainstorm settled back in his seat and placed his hands behind his head. There. That ought to calm them down for a while. Sir. Midnight Express piped up. What was one of those side effects you mentioned? The drowsiness. And no, the other one. Right, the memory loss. Brainstorm tapped his chin. The lab bots did tell me that the cryogel that we used to incubate test subjects could result in slight memory loss, but they told me it wasn't common. Railspike cleared his vents and pointed out, Ahem, but sir, if the subjects did suffer memory loss, wouldn't they be even more panicked about being on board the colony? They probably wouldn't even remember agreeing to board the ship in the first place. Brainstorm simply waved the concerns away. Relax, they're a bunch of primitives from what I remember. How much of a ruckus could they possibly? Ka-choom. *BWAAAM *BWAAM *BWAAM. Brainstorm's optics snapped open as the sound of a big explosion made the ship tremor slightly, and all at once, the alarm sounded off once again. That answer your question, boss man. Rapid Run shot back. Scrap. Earth, present. Izuku couldn't believe it. They had done it. They had actually done it. For the first time in forever, he and Katsuki Bakugo had actually worked together to make something work. And that something was taking the number one hero and the leader of the Autobots off guard. Now all they had to do was run like hell toward the finish line and they would pass their final exam. Well, HE was the only one running. Bakugo himself was propelling himself through the air with his blasts while Shoto skated across the ice path he was making. But still, the three of them were on their way out. We're almost there, Izuku exclaimed, seeing the escape gate come into view across the fake city. Like all of the others, it was propped up with a pair of spiraling red and blue pillars with a giant banner that depicted Nezu giving a thumbs up, along with a word bubble that said, "Do your best." In katakana. Just a little further. It looks kinda ridiculous, but if we can get through that gate, we'll pass the final. Bakugo, however, couldn't help but notice just how much damage All Might had really done with his initial smash. Damn, All Might's attack was from the other side of the fake city, but it reached all the way here. What the hell is that power? Shoto peered over his shoulder, watching the cloud of dust from their sneak attack rise into the air, but neither of their opponents were in sight. It doesn't seem like All Might or Orion are chasing us. Really? Izuku looked back as well. Don't tell me we actually knocked them out back there. TCH, of course not. Bakugo snapped, already annoyed once again. You're the one who keeps going on about how it's impossible to beat him. There's no way that attack KO'd either of them. His brow furrowed, knowing what he'd have to do soon. When they catch up to us, it'll be my turn to blast him to hell with the gauntlet. And then, one word was spoken that left the boys with goosebumps. Interesting. Shum asterisk, and then what will you do? The trio let out a collective shout as All Might appeared between them, with Bakugo swinging his arm out to blast him right in the face with his gauntlet. However, the number one hero was much faster, destroying the grenade-shaped accessory with a single blow. Don't tell me you're surprised. He proceeded to swing his other fist back and smashed the other gauntlet for good measure, taking Izuku off balance. No. Shoto went to create another ice wave to take All Might out, but was promptly rammed into from behind. Gah! Optimus had slammed right into him, the young man now stuck to the grill of his truck mode like a hood ornament. Auk. WHRRTSCHZZTSCHZZTSCHZZCHKT. Transforming into robot mode, Prime grabbed Shoto by the waist and tossed him straight into the nearest light post, though by his standards, the throw was fairly soft. He had to be careful to hold back somewhat, after all, even if he had to motivate the young man into giving it his all. You'll have to do better than that, Shoto. Optimus goaded. Come on, give me all you've got. The half-cold half-hot user was taken aback. This was a side of Optimus that he had never seen before, and as he stumbled out of the building, he had to tell himself to follow his orders. You want my best. All at once, his left side ignited into flames, raising his arm to attack. Then very well. All at once, a flurry of furious fire was unleashed upon Optimus, who stared down the incoming wall with nary a flinch. All he did was nod in approval. Impressive. Perhaps it's time I pull out a few tricks of my own. From his right hand, he brought out his Energon axe and raised it up, only for him to start swinging the weapon around. Shoto was confused, having not seen the move before, but he was even more shocked by the effect. Because as the axe spun in circles, it acted as a sort of shield against his fire, dispersing most of it. Though in the process, it also wound up absorbing some of the flames as well, resulting in the orange axe becoming a burnt red color. What the? Shoto uttered with wide eyes. My turn. Reeling his arm back, Prime went to swing his axe in attack, though instead of striking Shoto directly, something different happened. The burning axe made an energy replica of itself and launched directly off his hand, whirling through the air directly toward the boy. Shoto gasped and made an ice wall to block it, but in a split second, he saw it melting through, so he instead chose to dive to the side and cover his head as his construct, and the building behind him, were both destroyed. How? Shoto picked himself up, glancing back to see the total, burning building. How did he? Whoa. He jumped up just in time to avoid another of the flying axes, though this one wasn't burning like the last one. With his axe back to normal, Prime made a, come and get me, motion with his hand. Come now, Shoto, gasping in desperation, the young man began creating ice shard after ice shard, but Prime simply kept deftly dodging with surprising agility while throwing more energy axes, cleaving through them with ease. Is this really the best you can do? Needless to say, the students who were observing this happen were left speechless, mostly. Since when the hell can Prime do that? Kyoka screamed, incredulous at the events unfolding. What the actual crap is going on here? Tenya rubbed his head, trying to comprehend what the Autobot leader was doing. This is a completely new side of Prime. Nothing which we've ever seen before. The Autobots, however, weren't as shocked, though some were still pleasantly surprised. Woo. Been a while since I've seen Prime move like that, for sure. Jeff proclaimed, clapping his hands in applause for his leader. He's pulling out all the stops on this one. His words made Momo snap her head toward them. Wait, you're saying that Orion could move like this all along? Yeah, he just chooses not to most of the time. Sadie said, the femme furrowing her brow at the screen while clarifying, he only moves like this whenever he's in a battle with a certain individual. And just like that, all of the students in the know clearly understood what she meant, though that only left the rest of 1A with more questions. Sato tilted his head. Who are you talking about? Buck peered down to the large boy past his shoulder. Probably shouldn't ask questions you aren't ready to hear the answer for yet, kid. Someday, maybe. But not today. Zero crossed his arms, making his disappointment known. What the heck, man. Now you're suddenly being secretive. Some secrets are better left kept that way. Wendy stated, nudging her head toward their human companions. Even your classmates don't know everything about us, and considering what we do, that's for the best. Of course, that was another blatant lie, but the rest of 1A didn't have to know about that sort of stuff yet. Though that didn't stop a certain frog girl from taking note of what she said. Secrets, Sue said with narrowed eyes. Like maybe you're not who you say you are. Exactly. Aizawa affirmed, unaware of what his amphibious student was thinking. Now I suggest you focus back on the fight. It seems All Might's got your classmates on the ropes. Kyoka's eyes widened as she whipped back around. Wait, what? Unfortunately, just as Aizawa had said, things hadn't gone so well for either Izuku or Bakugo while Prime was putting Shoto in a rough spot. Just as the young greenette had thought, they never stood a chance. He's too fast for us. He yelled woefully in his head after getting knocked back from the last hit. All Might himself, however, could literally feel his own weight working against him. With these things on, I'm nowhere near my top speed, but hey, all's fair in this test. With that, he laughed and swung himself around, bringing about his next attack. Alright, heroes. It's time for you both to die. His elbow struck Bakugo straight in the chest, sending him hurtling into the sky before crashing straight into one of the ruined buildings. Kachan. Izuku went to chase after his teammate, but once again, All Might was far too quick, socking him straight in the gut and then grabbing him by the wrist. But just as quickly as he had been thrown in, Katsuki launched himself back out of the building with a massive explosion. "That's my line," he screamed, ready to make All Might die. However, that wouldn't come to pass. Instead, All Might used Izuku's own body as a bludgeon to strike Katsuki into the earth below, kicking up a massive cloud of dirt. Of course, the impact caught Optimus and Shoto's attention almost instantly. "Oh no," the latter muttered. Interesting. Quickly reaching behind his back, Optimus pulled out his ion blaster and shot directly in front of Shoto, blowing him backwards. "But you shouldn't let simple distractions make you lose focus, Shoto." He approached the young man and gently settled his foot over his lower half, being extremely careful not to put his whole weight down. Even so, it was enough to trap Shoto, who struggled to move his legs as the Energon axe glowed in his face. "Now, what shall I do with you?" As the dust cleared, All Might was revealed to also have a student pinned beneath him, his foot planted firmly on Bakugo's back while Izuku hung limp in his grasp. "Ah, well, isn't that wonderful, boys?" he said as he glanced between the duo. "You all cooperated, however reluctantly, and faced me together. Sadly, that's not enough. Cooperation wasn't an option, it was a prerequisite for this exam." Much as he tried to fight against the pressure against him, Katsuki ultimately knew that it was in vain. "He's got overwhelming speed, with strength and stamina I can't hope to match." He didn't want to admit it, but he knew it to be true. "He's not just powerful, he is power. I realize that even more, now that I've faced him myself. This man is the most unstoppable force in the world. He really is the greatest hero on Earth." The number one hero's attention was drawn to Izuku as he began wriggling, trying to slip his wrist out of All Might's hand. "I wonder, what sort of face are you making under that mask, young Midoriya?" His question managed to take his protege off guard. "Is it one of confidence? One of fear? Do you have your smile on or not?" Swinging his free fist into Izuku's chest, he sent the boy tumbling across the street, knocking his helmet off in the process. "Ah, that's better. A helmet might serve as protection, and can be quite cool. But when it comes to citizens, they always want to see what their heroes are feeling, and a helmet obstructs that. So, what are you feeling, young Midoriya?" I feel," lifting his head, Izuku revealed his face, as well as the twisted, grimacing grin that he was wearing. He almost seemed on the verge of tears, trembling with fear, pain, and frustration all at once. A very odd mixture of emotions right now. He shakily stood up and reached for his helmet. "You're right, though, people do like to see what heroes are feeling. But here's the thing," lifting his helmet over his head, Izuku declared, "I'll show them my smile once I make sure that everything's alright." With that, he slipped his head back into the helmet, the insectoid eyes shining to life in the process. "Until then, I'll keep pushing. No matter what it takes. TCH, so now you grow a pair." Bakugo snapped. "Freaking pick what you wanna do, Deck, Gia." He was silenced when All Might pressed his foot down further, making the blonde's knees and elbows buckle. Izuku brought up full cowling and was about to sprint for the save. "Kachan, no. Choose your battles wisely, young Midoriya." All Might wagged his finger, pointing between himself and Optimus. "Remember, young Bakugo isn't your only teammate in peril. You can either save one or the other in this scenario, Mr. Kamen Rider wannabe, so who will you choose?" The Greenette whirled around, seeing Prime holding the sharp edge of his axe near Shoto's head, and it was at this point that he was truly stuck. I don't." His gaze shifted to the ground, where the remains of Bakugo's grenade gauntlets were strewn about. "You planned to get away from us using maximum firepower, and then make a run for the escape gate. It wasn't a terrible strategy, all things considered." All Might raised a finger up. "But, now that I've destroyed young Bakugo's gauntlets, you've lost your heavy attack. And now you're stuck between a rock and a hard place, young Midoriya. It's over. You three are helpless." And just like that, Katsuki's anger was once again spiked. He flipped his hand around so his palm was facing up and turned his head so he could look All Might in the eye. From his glove, a brilliant light began to shine, and things suddenly got very, very warm. "Shut up." The light went from bright to blinding before everything was covered in a thick layer of smoke. Asterisk Crockett THOOOM. Comma dot dot. Asterisk BWAAAM asterisk BWAAAM asterisk BWAAAM. Well, it looks like we just had to seal up Science Sphere 7. Hull breach. Another adventure party smashed through the hull to learn the big mystery. Beep 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 boop beep. Guess they were busy doing that instead of testing because of mentioned that we're in space every half hour. By the way, still in space. 7 megacycles. This had been going on for 7 megacycles at this point, and Brainstorm was beginning to get a processor ache. Apparently, it had slipped his mind that these hairless veggie monkeys were not only incredibly strong, but were also somehow able to manipulate natural energy. They apparently called it key energy. Not sure what kind of key they've got, but if it's to something incredibly powerful, then I say we should run some tests on them if they decide to keep this up. The headmaster grumbled. Well, it's certainly not to any door, I can say that much. Midnight Express said, noting every breach point across the ship so far. They've blasted through so many that it's hard to keep track at this point. Pretty sure it's also not the kinda key you're thinking of, guys. Rapid Run deadpanned. Just then, the door to the bridge slid open, bringing their attention toward a rather tired-looking Applink, with Glyph and Botanica in tow. Aw man, guess you've come across our new guests, too, huh? Applink let out a sigh, sitting down on the nearest chair. To put it lightly. Meanwhile, Glyph could only barely make it into the room before falling on her face. I don't think I've ever seen an organic species this rowdy and powerful. What even are they? Well, they were a race of peace-loving pacifists who practiced martial arts and key manipulation, Botanica said before glaring daggers at Brainstorm. Until you dropped the bomb on them that they agreed to a test that they all completely forgot about once they woke up from it. What did I say about not throwing the passengers of this vessel into a panic? Brainstorm rolled his optics and raised a hand. Now, Botanica, let's not fly off the handle. Trust me, once the Protectobots get 'em all rounded up, I'll have their assigned Autobot explain it to him gentler. By the way, anyone remember who their assigned overseer was? That would be M.E., Brainstorm. The Autobot botanist exclaimed. I was the first to make contact with them on their home planet, remember? Oh, yes, that's right. The lead scientist snapped his fingers. Well then, we're gonna have to get you back down there on the double. I would, but many of the hallways are on fire. That gave Brainstorm pause for a moment before activating his comlink. Hotspot, might wanna get Hothouse and Flashpoint dealing with those fires on the double. Hotspot's reply was instantaneous. Already working on it, Chief, we got. Gah. Cha boom. Applink and the others winced at the unfortunate sound from the other end. Far be it from me to overstep, sir, the Maximal began. But maybe it'd be better to not try to corral them all up by force. You know, Applink, I was just about to suggest the same thing. Brainstorm concurred, leading to many groans throughout the bridge. Hotspot, change in tactics, time to go for the peaceful route. I'm gonna send Botanica down once the fires are out and… Beep 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 beep. All of a sudden, the conversation was brought to a halt when the main console began to sound off, garnering everyone's attention. Oh, for the love of Primus. Brainstorm said with a slump. What could it be this time? No need to worry, Captain. Railspike assured. It's actually some good news this time, potentially. Entering a command on his console, the leader of Team Bullet Train brought up the issue on screen, and the others could hardly believe it. You're kidding me, Applink uttered, seeing the blinking Autobot symbol. That's an Autobot craft, Botanica whispered. But, how? Glyph had managed to prop herself back up at the news. Out here of all places. Rapid Run looked to Brainstorm for his next order. It's Haliness, sir. What'd you wanna do? Put it through. Brainstorm directed. Botanica, understandably, was quite cautious. Are you certain that's wise? It could be a Decepticon trick. And it could also be a stranded Autobot in need of assistance. And it'll be a cold day in the pit if I just let this pass me by. Brainstorm pointed directly at Railspike and repeated, now, let the call go through. Without a second thought, Railspike followed the command, and once the communication was patched in, Brainstorm spoke directly to whoever hailed them. Unknown vessel, this is Brainstorm, leader of the Kimia Science Colony. Identify yourself. From the other end of the call, a very deep, gruff voice replied. Haha. Finally. Thank the maker ya didn't hang up on me. The bot laughed before the screen changed, allowing everyone to see his appearance. He was a very large, heavily armored Autobot with a orange, green and brown color scheme, with huge shoulders and barrel chest. His head was very squat with a green visor and orange faceplate, along with 2 brown panels sticking up on each side. On his chest, he wore the Autobot symbol, but on his right shoulder was the blue Wrecker version of that same sigil. You guys got no idea how long it's been since I've seen another bot. The Autobots were relieved to see that it was, indeed, another of their faction, but Applink seemed the most surprised out of all of them. Roadbuster. He shot up from his seat and practically leapt into frame, allowing the Wrecker to see him. Is that really you? Leaning forward in his seat, Roadbuster let out a laugh the moment he saw the Maximal. Ha! As I live and vent. Applink. How the pit have you been, kid? Been doing good for the most part. Applink grinned. Gosh, you're a sight for sore optics. Applink, you know this bot? Glyph questioned. Giving his fellow scientist a smile, Applink jerked his thumb at Roadbuster on the screen. Ha, you know it. I was part of his team for a brief time before I decided to dedicate myself more to my research. Botanica placed a finger on her chin. Roadbuster, she pondered. That name sounds very familiar. It should be. Brainstorm affirmed. He's only one of the most decorated wreckers in history. He nodded up to the large Autobot. What brings all the way out here, soldier? What else? Prime's message. Roadbuster laughed, bringing up one of his green hands and clenching it eagerly. I'm chomping at the bit to bust some Decepti chops on that Earth planet he talked about. Hopefully the population ain't too squishy. He shook his head and shifted to a different topic. But that's besides the point. I hailed you guys cause I've got some pretty important news, and it ain't the good kind. Applink urged his comrade to go on. Well, don't leave us in suspense, Roadbuster. What is it? The Wrecker typed in a command on his console, bringing up a smaller display that depicted something quite concerning. A Decepticon signal, and it was huge. I picked this up once I entered this solar system. I managed to stay out of their scanner range, but I don't think I gotta tell ya just how bad this is. The optics of every Autobot present widened at the sight. A Decepticon warship, Brainstorm uttered. Scrap. I know this is a rarity for us, but I agree, Brainstorm. Botanica pursed her lips worriedly. This is far from good. Seems old Buckethead caught wind of the new hotness in the galaxy. Roadbuster said, collapsing the smaller screen. And its name is Planet Earth. I'm gonna try and get my rust bucket of a ship to pick up the pace and get there before the cons do. And I suggest you get AFTS in gear, too. The bots down there are gonna need backup. However, Brainstorm shook his head. Gah, unfortunately, that might not be possible right now. Our engines are still being fixed from a previous incident we had on board. We're going through space fine, but lightspeed capabilities are unavailable right now. Got any smaller ships on board freight, then? Maybe you could send out a smaller team to get back up to the planet. Appllink's optics lit up as an idea formed in his processor. Well, we do have a couple scout ships that are pretty quick. We could send an away team that way. He craned his head toward his mentor. What do you say, Brainstorm? I'd be a big help to the bots on Earth if we did. The suggestion gave Brainstorm pause to think, but his thought process would be interrupted the very next second. *KRA boom. *BWAAAM *BWAAAM *BWAAAM. All at once, another tremor shook the ship and nearly made everyone lose their balance, taking Roadbuster aback as the alarm began to blare once again. Whoa, what the frag was that? Gah, scrap. Hang on. Brainstorm sprinted back to his chair, activating the intercom as he brought up a holographic keypad. On another hull breach. Beep 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 boop beep. Let's all give it a big hand to the veggie monkeys who got to Sphere 18 and bravely uncovered the company-wide conspiracy, which is that there is no air in space. Once again, we're in space. It's not a secret. I am sincerely regretting not installing more windows on this thing. With a heavy sigh, the headmaster moved back to the conversation at hand. I'm sorry, Roadbuster, where were we? But the Wrecker was still stuck on what had just happened. There's something going on over there. Ah, just a bunch of rowdy test subjects. Brainstorm waved off. Don't worry, we're taking care of things here as we speak. Botanica made a sour face at the headmaster. Yes, if by taking care of things, you mean insulting the passengers. I mean, really, calling them monkeys is probably the worst thing you can possibly do. She narrowed her optics at him, placing her hands on her hips. You could at least have the common decency to learn the name of their species. Ha, for your information, I do know. Brainstorm asserted, activating his arm-mounted computer. I keep a catalog of every species on this ship, after all. Let's see, these veggie monkeys are apparently called Psy. Brainstorm, sir. All of a sudden, the holoscreen on the headmaster's wrist switched to hotspot, taking him off guard. Gah, hotspot, what's going? One of the test subjects managed to make a break for it. She's headed straight for the hangar bay. Hotspot explained, running as fast as he could. I think she's going for one of the scout ships. A collective, what? Rang through the room, with Roadbuster commenting, well, that ain't good. Hang tight, I'll make a beeline for her location and. But Brainstorm stopped him right there. No, Roadbuster. Do not break your course. If that Decepticon ship gets to Earth before any other Autobots do, then Prime's team won't be prepared for their arrival. He narrowed his optics at the larger bot. You're a wrecker, right? Your place is on the battlefield. Once we get our mess cleaned up, I'll send a scout ship with some backup. That's a promise. Roadbuster hesitated for a moment, but ultimately, he knew that the scientist was right. Gah, you smart alecky types really know how to convince a bot. Alright, I've got the message. Hope to see you all soon. Good luck, Roadbuster out. With that, the transmission ended and the screen went dark, leaving the crew to head straight for the door. Alright, team, Brainstorm said, taking the lead. Let's see if we can't convince this rogue to put a lid on her tantrum. Izuku had been thrown for a loop. 1 minute, he was caught having to make a decision that he didn't want, and the next, everything had blown up in his face. All Might had been sent flying, Prime had been thrown off his feet, freeing both Katsuki and Shoto respectively. Thankfully, the smoke from the explosion was being filtered through his mask, so the Greenette didn't have to worry about that. But then, he felt someone grab him by the collar, taking him off guard. Gah, what the? Get ready to fly, nerd. Bakugo barked before hefting Izuku right over his shoulder, much to the latter's shock. I don't like the idea of running, but with the crapfest we're in right now, this is the only way to pass the practical. Hey, Izuku shouted in protest. Wait a minute, don't. Now diiiiee. Ka-boom with yet another powerful blast, Bakugo flung Izuku straight toward the escape gate, and in the process, he felt the muscles in his arms start twinging badly. Goo. Todoroki. Shoto snapped his head up just in time to avoid Prime's incoming hand, rolling out of the way and igniting a powerful fire in the process, and mixing with the smoke resulted in an inferno that blew everyone away. Gah. Landing in a crouch, Shoto slid next to Bakugo, glancing at him and asking, so, the plan is to let Midoriya cross the line without us? Katsuki scowled in response. Last thing I want is that damn nerd hogging all the glory. He clenched his hand, his palm creating more sparks despite the pain. But if I have to go down like this, then that's fine with me. I'm not about to lose this, do you hear me? Second time I've agreed with you today. As the boys went to fend off their opponents, Izuku was still processing what had just happened. Are you serious? But all at once, he realized that he hadn't been taken down yet, and a glimmer of hope shined through in his mind. Wait, Prime and All Might are staggered, maybe I can reach it. He was about to activate his quirk and propel himself through the air, when all of his hopes were dashed in an instant. New Hampshire, SMAAAASHH. Punching the air, All Might flung himself through the smoke and ash, slamming back first into Izuku's own back. The result was the Greenette's spine bending back far more than natural, and the scream he gave out indicated he was, in fact, in immense pain. You're being too naive, heroes. As Izuku crash-landed into a UA bus, Bakugo launched himself into the air, shouting, damn it. Shoto was about to follow him, but was quickly cut off when Prime slammed his foot in his way. Going somewhere, Shoto? The rather charred Autobot leader asked. Alright, this is just getting annoying at this point. Once more, Shoto unleashed a wave of ice from his foot, though he winced when he did, feeling an uncomfortable spasm go up his leg. Gah! Cleaving through the ice with his axe, Optimus loomed over the young man. You are injured. Perhaps it's time you admit defeat. Never. Rather than surrender, the half-cold half-hot user created a sheet of ice that froze Prime's feet over, allowing him to slide right under the Autobot. However, his trap only lasted by a moment before Optimus pulled himself free and started to chase after him. Bakugo, meanwhile, was bounding through the air on the explosions he let loose from his hands, intent on catching up before All Might could cut Deku off completely. And there was only one way to do it. Those gauntlets were so I could use maximum firepower with no risk, but now, I see that was stupid. With a manic grin, he thrust his arms out, bearing through the pain as he unleashed yet a second full-power blast. If I don't take any risks, there's no way I can beat you. All Might. On the ground, Izuku could only watch as the blast enveloped the number one hero, the intense heat making him cover his face. Another huge blast like he used at the sports festival. He also saw the ashen blonde clutching at his arms as he sailed backward through the air. That's two of them. Deku, go. Shoto, for as much pain as his knees were in, managed to stay standing as he kept Optimus at bay with dual blasts of ice and fire. We'll hold them off. Just get to the escape gate. Izuku was about to do just that, but then, his back pinched in a way that the rest of his body did not appreciate. Gah, my back, it's messed up. Grah-ah-h. Bakugo screamed in frustration, but all the same, he kept up the defensive. I can still move better than you, even if you are still learning to use your pathetic power, at least make yourself useful, damn it. Just as All Might was about to make another beeline for Izuku, the ashen blonde unleashed a third potent blast. Run. Keep going, Izuku thought with resolve as he picked himself up and limped toward the finish line, working on building up full cowling for one last push. Even if it hurts. If I head toward the gate, All Might and Prime will have to stop me before I can get there. As if reading his mind, the powerhouse duo had emerged from the smoke, leaping straight for him. Which means Kacchan and Todoroki can take advantage of that. Right on cue, his teammates came rushing in and used their quirks in tandem to unleash a massive, fiery blast upon their adversaries. However, by this point, Optimus and All Might knew what to expect, and both dove out of the way before coming back around, grabbing the two boys, and then swinging them straight into the dirt. Of course, Izuku was horrified by the sight, stopping in his tracks. You've fought well, Shoto. Prime commended, pushing the half-and-half user against the ground. You have earned a rest. As have you. Good night, young Bakugo. All Might added, with Katsuki's hand twitching in retaliation. I'm sorry. I may be the villain, but I'm still your teacher. And it pains me to see you sacrifice your own body in a fight. But, to All Might's surprise, Bakugo set his hand on his wrist, with small explosions bursting off his palm. Hurry up, go, you damn nerd. Bakugo uttered weakly, glaring up at All Might with sheer determination. I'll keep fighting. I'll break myself. Even if there's nothing left of me, I will win, the way I want to. I'll destroy myself before I accept defeat at your hands. He then bit down on All Might's hand, though it wasn't enough to make the hero flinch. Ya got that. All Might's characteristic grin faded, saddened by the sight of his student willing to hurt himself even further in the name of victory. But then, he felt something else. A shiver that spread across his whole body that was quite familiar. Gah. Don't tell me. Sure enough, the second he turned around, there was Izuku, clearly ignoring Bakugo's warning and running not toward the escape gate, but back to the fight. With full cowling activated, Izuku leapt straight for the number one hero, reeling his fist back as he flew. And, in that moment, All Might recalled something he said to his protege long ago. Whenever you're scared or nervous about a fight, just try and deal with it by smiling. And, while Deku's helmet obscured his face, All Might knew deep down that he was smiling. I'm only gonna say this once. Deku warned, fear and excitement laced in his voice. Move, All Might. In a split second, the distance closed between them and Deku socked his mentor in the left cheek. SMAAASHH. Then, with an agile leap, he rebounded off of All Might's chest and shot himself straight toward Optimus midsection with a flying kick. Sorry, Prime. POLYHEXSMAAAAASHH. Gah. The force of the impact was enough to make Optimus trip back and fall right into a building, causing the whole front of it to collapse on top of him. With Shoto freed, the monochromatic boy got to his feet, despite the pain in his knees, and met up with Deku. Midoriya, what are you? I'm sorry. Izuku apologized, scrambling to hoist the now unconscious Bakugo over his shoulders. This is just who I am. Now help me out here, please. Shot wasted no time and helped Midoriya with the burden, the two making a run for the gate. Grr, I won't, Hawk Hawk. All Might was about to press his attack further, only to cough up more blood into his hand, just as his body was starting to steam. No, I believe we're done. Optimus said, sitting up out of the rubble as he watched the boys dash away. Izuku could have easily shot through the gate and passed the exam for both of them, but he came back to save them instead. A weak laugh passed All Might's bloody lips. Haha, for sure. He hit me with everything he had, too. He smiled with pride, watching as the boys got within 10 feet of the finish line. I shouldn't be surprised, though. This is how he's been from the start. He can't help but save those who need help, even if they didn't ask. And in times like that, there isn't an obstacle hard enough to stop him. The Prime nodded and gave a thumbs up, just as the boys went through the escape gate. Well put, my friend. Team Midoriya, Bakugo and Todoroki have passed the final. All matches for the practical portions of Class 1A's final have now been completed. At the very moment that announcement was made, nearly all of Class 1A broke out into celebration, whooping, hollering and jumping for joy. They did it. They had all passed their practical exams and, in turn, would all get to go on the summer trip. Ochako, Sue, Mina and Toru were screaming while holding hands, while Eijiro, Denki, Shiro, Sato and Ojiro knocked their fists together with victory yells. Tokiyami, Shoji and Koda, as well as Shinso, reserved themselves to happy smiles, nodding to one another approvingly. Others, like Tenya and Kyoka, let go of relieved sighs that they didn't know they were holding onto. Thank God, Kyoka said before beaming up to the screen, where she watched her best friend promptly collapse after crossing the finish line. Nice work, Green Bean. You've earned the rest. Keita couldn't help but chuckle as she saw Shoto checking on Izuku. Hehe, you bet. All of them have, especially since Baku Breath didn't screw him over. She raised her fist to the punk rocker, who promptly bumped it with her own. But what a turnout, huh? We all pulled it off. I can hardly believe it. Tenya admitted, placing a hand over his chest. I would have thought at least one of us would fail, but we all did it. But upon him saying that, Aizawa cleared his throat, clarifying. About that, may I remind you all that the final scores have yet to be properly graded. His announcement promptly made the whole class stop their festivities, all eyes now on him. Of course, the practical serves as half your grade, so congrats on solidifying that part. You'll know full your scores by Saturday. On that note, he and Nezu began making their way toward the door. Go get changed and meet me back at the classroom before dismissal. Excellent work, all of you. Nezu said with a thumbs up before departing. Once the duo were gone, the entire room remained silent for but a second before Keita grumbled, well, leave Teach to bring down the mood, huh? Yes, but that's just how Mr. Aizawa is, honestly. Momo said, only to put on a smile once again. But even so, I am so extremely proud of everyone here. And don't worry. Even if some scores aren't the highest, I have full confidence that we will all go to the summer camp. That's quite the optimism. Recovery Girl said as she hopped out of her chair and began making her way toward her temporary office. You all would do well to follow her example. Now, if you'll excuse me, I've got to go help your classmate. And I think it's time that you all be heading out as well. The Autobots, heeding the nurse's advice, began to usher the students out. Yeah, about time we wrap things up. Buck concurred. You kids go change and meet us outside. We'll give you all a lift back to school. One by one, the 1A students worked their way out of the room, patting themselves on the back all the while. However, before the Autobots, human partners could depart, Windblade cut them off by sliding in front of the door. Hey, all of you, awesome job today. Yeah, you kids kicked Major Tailpipe out there. Sideswipe said, placing a hand on Eijiro's shoulder. You've overcome your trials and proved today just how tough you kids are. Sunstreaker added, pounding a fist against Denki's chest. Just goes to show how your training with us really paid off. Yeah, I'd say so. Denki agreed. Eijiro shared a high five with his partner. We owe you guys big time, that's for sure. Jazz came up and nudged Kyoka's shoulder. No ya don't. We were more than happy to help out. And, hey, once we get back to base tonight, we'll throw a huge party to celebrate. How's that sound? So long as you're in charge of the tunes, it's fine by me. Kyoka winked, though her expression soured a bit afterward. But I do have to give Prime a piece of my mind after that big surprise he sprung on us. Strongarm came up to the girl, wearing a sympathetic smile as she placed a hand on her shoulder. Oh, go easy on him, Kyoka. Sure, he didn't tell us anything about this, but given the situation, I'm sure he couldn't have. Yeah, but still, he's done this twice already. Kyoka pouted. Not exactly very Autobot-like, to be deceptive like that, isn't it? Next to her, Bumblebee could only shrug, scratching his head awkwardly. Thought so. Come on, let's go. But once the door opened for them all, they were met with a surprising sight on the other side. Sue. The green-haired frog girl was leaning against the wall, her hands laced together in a patient pose. She turned her head up, gazing at the group nervously. Hey there, guys, Ribbit. Ochako and Sadie were visibly concerned by her demeanor. Sue. Is everything okay? The gravity user asked, approaching warily. You don't look so good, sweetie. Sadie added. Is there something wrong? Sue twiddled her thumbs, taking a deep breath to try and steel her nerves. Well, kinda. I need to talk to you all about something. And it's really important. Putting on her best confident face, she stood up before the whole group said, how much do you guys know about giant, alien robots? Specifically, ones from the planet Cybertron. Seeing their stunned expressions, Sue knew immediately that she had them dead to rights. I'm guessing a lot. Kyoka's lips tightened as she approached the girl. Sue, how do you know about that? It's a long story. At that point, Bulkhead came up, looking down at her expectantly. And we're willing to hear it, little lady. And please, make sure you tell us everything. Trust me, I don't plan on leaving anything out. Sue assured. Back in deep space, the entirety of the Kimia space colony was on high alert. Many bots were aiding in the effort to bring these so-called veggie monkeys under control, with many trying to calm them down and explain exactly what was going on. Even so, with just how many explosions were happening throughout the entire ship, it was plain to see it wasn't an easy task. Throughout all of the carnage, though, something extremely fast was making its way toward the hangar bay, leaving a trail of blue in its wake while shouting, "Excuse me." Coming through. Out of the way. While passing the other bots in the halls. Finally, though, the rocketing robot reached his destination, revealing himself to be none other than Blur. He had heard the APB put out on a rogue female headed toward the hangar bay, no doubt trying to beat a hasty escape. Well, if we was on a path of redemption, he figured that this would be a good place to start. Ho ho, Override's gonna be so impressed when she hears what I did today. On that note, he promptly began having a conversation with himself. Oh, Blur, I heard that you single-handedly brought down a rioting group of space monkeys. Why yes I did, Override. Aren't you impressed? I am. And just for that, I'm gonna let you win the next race. Little did he know, however, he wasn't alone. Blur. Oh, you're too kind. But please, I wanna earn the trophy, thank you. It was only when a much gruffer voice piped up did the speedster snap out of his self-aggrandizing scenario. Blur. Gia. The blue Autobot spun around, seeing Brianstorm, Team Bullet Train, Applink, Glyph and Botanica all standing behind him. Oh, haha. Hey guys. Blur stammered, suddenly feeling quite bashful. How long were you standing there? Botanica crossed her arms with a deadpan stare. Long enough. Gotcha, Blur grimaced as he cleared his throat. Ahem, so, glad you guys could make it. Looks like we got here before that monkey lady did. He balled his fists in anticipation. With all of us here, she doesn't stand a chance. Now hold on there, kid. Brainstorm halted, holding a hand up to the young bot. Remember, this ain't Velocitron. Ya can't just rush in and throw fists before ya think. Our goal here is to try and calm the Ka-boom. All at once, the wall across the room exploded, with several beams of energy shearing through the metal like a hot blade. The Autobots all huddled together, taking defensive stances as they saw a figure come, floating through the black smoke. Once she emerged fully, they saw that she was a young, bipedal creature that stood at about 6 feet tall. Certainly much smaller than they were, but no less powerful given her impressive musculature and the glowing aura around her body. She had fair skin and had long, shaggy brown hair done up in a bushy ponytail which matched her simian tail, though her bangs were long enough to cover her right eye just a bit. Her clothing, meanwhile, covered the essentials. Her arms, legs and stomach were all exposed, being that she was wearing only a red top with a single strap over her left shoulder, and match bottom piece, which was accented by a green sarong around her waist. She also wore nothing on her feet, though she wore a gold anklet around her left leg that was encrusted with red jewels. Her eyes were chocolate brown and she had a small scar just above her left eye, with a larger one on her opposite shoulder. Brainstorm narrowed his optics as the monkey woman glowered down at them. The rogue Saiyan. Wait, that's a Saiyan. Blur exclaimed. I thought they were a race of pacifists. They are, for the most part. Botanica said. But when push comes to shove, they know how to defend themselves. She made her way forward and raised her hands to the Saiyan woman. Please, we mean you no harm. The brunette clenched her jaw, her tail flicking in irritation. TCH, she sneered. More robots. She raised her hand, aiming down at them as a ball of ki energy appeared in her palm. I'm only gonna say this once, stand aside and let us through. Applink attempted to aid Botanica in calming the situation. There's been a terrible misunderstanding, miss. Please, if we could all just calm down and, bam asterisk, gah. The Maximal jumped back just in time to avoid the blast, which burnt a hole through the floor. Don't try to fool me. You're all in league with Frieza, aren't you? The Saiyan woman floated down, glaring at Brainstorm at eye level. We know of his plans to conquer our planet. My guess is that he employed you to take us away so that our numbers on planet Vegeta are diminished. Am I right or am I right? Brainstorm shook his head vehemently. No, you're very wrong. Frieza is dead, ma'am. Cha bam asterisk, whoa. Brainstorm had to duck just as the Saiyan woman unleashed an energy beam at his head, forcing everyone else to dive away. Liar. The young woman barked. A being with Frieza's power can't be killed so easily. You're right, which is why it was hell fighting him. Brainstorm continued, standing up with confidence. But we did, all of us. We helped you defeat him, permanently. The Saiyan woman's eyes widened at the claim, but her brows were still furrowed skeptically. Really? Then where is your proof, Metal Man? Oh, trust me, I have it. Brainstorm brought up his wrist-mounted keypad, entering a special code which activated a holoscreen projection. Thankfully, I anticipated that the cryo tubes would give you this short-term memory loss, so I made sure to take video evidence of the final battle's aftermath. Have a look. The video started to play, and the first face that the Saiyan saw on the screen took her by surprise. It was none other than the leader of her planet. He was an imposing individual, even if he wasn't the tallest Saiyan there. Besides, his big, spiky brown hair added at least another 2 feet to him. He also had a shaggy beard that went down toward his chest, and he wore garbs made of animal pelts that were dyed a royal blue with a red cape hanging from his shoulders. He was standing across from Brainstorm, Botanica, Applink, as well as several other Autobots, and behind him were some of the planet's greatest warriors, along with his own son, and they all looked incredibly happy. The young woman blinked and rubbed her eyes, making sure what she saw was real. Chieftain Vegeta. On behalf of the Saiyan race, the bearded Saiyan began, I, Vegeta III, extend my sincerest gratitude to you Autobots for aiding us in defending our planet against the tyrannical Frieza force. He placed a fist over his chest in a salute, which the Saiyan warriors behind him mimicked. We are in your debt, Brainstorm. On screen, Brainstorm mimicked the salute as well. No thanks are necessary, just doing what an Autobot is meant to do, protect the innocent. His expression took on a grim gaze. But even so, the galaxy's troubles don't end with Frieza. He might have been powerful, without a doubt, but you can bet that our foe, Megatron, is also a huge threat. Megatron, Chieftain Vegeta crossed his arms over his chest. You mentioned him during the battle. I take it that he is just as bad as Frieza was. Oh, very much so. In fact, in some aspects, I'd say he's even worse. His Decepticon army is vast and probably even more well-armed than Frieza's. Brainstorm knelt down and extended a hand to the leader of the Saiyans. We would greatly appreciate your people's aid in fighting this daunting foe, because at the moment, our own leader, Optimus Prime, has gone missing. And we could use every ounce of help that we can. Just then, a voice spoke out from the crowd of Saiyans. Chieftain Vegeta. To the Saiyan woman's astonishment, she saw that it was herself. Sorry for speaking out of turn, but maybe some of us could travel with these Autobots. After seeing what they're capable of, I want to help them in return for helping us. Another Saiyan came forward, this one a teenage boy who was shorter than herself. Yeah, me too. If we thought Frieza was bad, think of what this Megatron guy could do if he reaches our planet. After that, many other Saiyans began to volunteer as well, to which the chieftain raised his hand. Alright, let's all settle down. I hear all of you, loud and clear. Vegeta lowered his arm and turned back to Brainstorm. It seems that my people are as fully convinced of your trustworthiness as I am. And honestly, I think it's probably the best course of action. Would you allow them to come with you on your journey across the cosmos? Scanning his optics across the group of Saiyans, Brainstorm chuckled and replied, hee, they'd be more than welcome. Provided that they can aid us in our scientific advancements. The female Saiyan came forward, her fists balled up eagerly. We'll do whatever you need us to do, so long as it's within reason, of course. Brainstorm gave a thumbs up. Great. Then you're free to be welcomed aboard the Kimia, my Saiyan friends. At his announcement, the group of Saiyans let out a massive cheer, before the screen went completely blank. That was 5 years ago, the present Brainstorm stated, which made the female Saiyan fall to her knees. He could just tell that she was trying to process all of this information in her mind, her memories likely flooding back to her all at once. Tell me, young lady, what is your name? Rutaba. The young woman answered, craning her head up to the Autobots. My name is Rutaba. I'm 20 years old and was a farm girl before the war with Frieza. Her brow furrowed, remembering the teenager in the video. And, that boy, he was Cha-kun. All at once, another wall was blown through by several ki blasts, where a massive outpouring of angry Saiyans came flying through. They were followed close behind by the Protectobots, though they were practically getting swarmed by their smaller adversaries. And leading the charge was that very same boy from the video. He had scruffy black hair and had brown eyes just like her, his chest covered by a green shirt while he wore brown, tattered shorts around his lower extremities. He was also barefoot, which extended to all of the other Saiyans as well. Sis! The boy cried out, readying another ki blast as he aimed at the Autobots. Get down! No! Rutaba flew up and grabbed him by the wrist. KHOL, stop! Don't hurt them! The teen was taken aback, his features scrunching in confusion. What? Sis, what's gotten into you? We were wrong, little bro. Rutaba stressed, speaking up so that the other Saiyans could hear. We were all wrong. What they're saying is the truth. We volunteered ourselves to come aboard this ship after these bots helped save planet Vegeta from the Frieza force. Number way. KHOL shook his head in disbelief. That can't be. Frieza's one of the most powerful beings in the galaxy, how could they have? Clunk clunk. Brainstorm pointed to the ground, the cockpit on his chest wide open after accessing his storage unit. Don't believe me? Take a look at that. On the floor in front of his feet was what appeared to be a piece of chest armor that was purple in color, with long, ridged shoulder pads. That enough proof for ya? Your chieftain said I should show that to you if you weren't convinced. That's Frieza's armor. KHOL backed away, still in shock over what he was seeing. So, he really is gone. How? Applelink pointed straight up. Our ship, well, more accurately, the Titan that transforms into our ship did a lot of the damage. But he was ultimately finished off by a man called Bardock. The scientist. Correct. A very admirable scientist at that. Brainstorm knelt down, retracting his faceplate so that the Saiyans could see his smile. And, I apologize for my announcements earlier. I've been told that I can be rather blunt. Behind him, he heard Botanica cough into her hand. But to the point, you all courageously offered your help to us when we told you of our conflict with the Decepticons, and for that, I will be eternally grateful. So could we possibly stop with the whole, wreaking havoc on my ship, please? The group of Saiyans all looked to one another, slowly but surely nodding in agreement. Okay. Rutaba agreed. But one question, if we've been asleep for 5 years, then where in the universe are we now? Somewhere far from planet Vegeta. Brainstorm replied. We're entering a solar system that's basically straight across the galaxy from where you all were. Standing up, the headmaster took a deep intake as he explained further. We're headed toward a planet called Earth, which is much like your own only less jungle-y from what I've heard. Our leader, Optimus Prime, is there, and with him lies our best hope in countering the Decepticon threat. Khol folded his arms over his chest. Well, I guess that's good news, I think. How far out are we? By your time, a bit over 2 weeks away at the pace that we're going. Glyph answered, though her features were etched with concern. But we've got a new problem now. Decepticon reinforcements are ahead of us, and we need to try and beat them there. Brainstorm nodded and extended his hand toward the scout ships. That's right. The plan is to send a squad ahead of us to provide that backup. And on that note, I ask all of you, he scanned his optics across the room, taking note of Autobots and Saiyans alike. Any volunteers? Chapter 87, Seaside Recovery. MMMMMWAH. A short yet relieved sigh escaped Izuku's throat after Recovery Girl applied her quirk to him. The elderly woman smooched to his cheek, sending a healing effect throughout his entire body. The results weren't instantaneous, unlike Marissa's quirk, but the fact that his back was already feeling much better still spoke volumes of it. Though unfortunately, the way he was positioned on the nurse's bed wasn't entirely flattering. The way All Might had crashed into his back left him bending backwards, meaning while his head was against the pillow, his rear end was stuck straight in the air. He was just grateful that none of his friends could see him right now, apart from Todoroki, who was also in a bad way. Bakugo, meanwhile, was still unconscious. Thank you so much, Recovery Girl. Izuku muttered into his pillow. I'm already starting to feel a lot better. The nurse gave a low hum as she moved over to Shoto, whose legs were propped up on 2 pillows. That's good. And what about you, dearie? Doing good, Shoto affirmed. Don't feel any pain in them at all, honestly. Good, that means you'll probably be able to walk out on your own. Recovery Girl's smile flipped upside down when she looked up to the 2 men who were responsible for the 3 boys' current state. But honestly, you two. Was it really necessary to go that far? She pointed her syringe cane at the coughing number 1 hero first. All Might, you really don't know how to hold back. Then she directed it toward the Autobot leader. And Orion, I am very surprised at you. If either you had hit these boys any harder, they'd have permanent damage. All Might coughed out the best apology he could muster. HK Hawk, sorry, Hawk. Orion raised his hand, bowing his head to the elderly woman in respect. And I apologize as well. I was told by Aizawa to only hold back so much, so that they would have a challenge. HMPH. Well, then I suppose he'll be getting an earful, too. Turning back to the boys, Recovery Girl grumbled, Todoroki's legs might have been okay by comparison, but Midoriya's back was just horrible. I was barely able to heal it. And Bakugo probably won't wake up for a while. For now, the 3 of you should stay here and rest. Shoto nodded affirmably. Right, we will. And thanks again, ma'am. Izuku added, weakly waving from his awkward position. Recovery Girl left the room, leaving All Might and Prime to look over the battered boys. The former focused in on his protege, who had closed his eyes as he relaxed his back. You're so much stronger than when we first met that sometimes I hardly recognize you, young Midoriya. His sights moved over to the other boys as well. And the same goes for you too. Young Bakugo, do you realize, you were able to smile in the face of defeat? And young Todoroki, the way you communicated with your teammates is a far cry from how reserved you were at the start of the year. Craning his head toward the window, the blond man took in the sunset, wondering just what lied ahead for his students. I can't wait to see how strong you 3 become. Feeling a hand settle on his shoulder, All Might turned back around to see Prime eyeing him curiously. Are you all right, my friend? Oh, yes, I'm fine. Toshinori waved with a reassuring smile. Just, reflecting on everything that's happened today. Hearing a grunt from below, the two men saw that Izuku was beginning to straighten out his back, much to their relief. Yeah, though to be totally honest, I'm glad it's over. I'm sure you are, young Midoriya. Raising a finger, All Might pointed out, and hey, you don't have to worry about these kinds of tests for another 6 whole months. By then, you'll be far more prepared, I'm certain of it. Sure. Provided we don't have to fight the two of you again. Shoto pointed out, even when you're holding back, you guys are a pretty powerful and cohesive team. Prime and All Might chuckled in unison at his point before the former spoke. I do not doubt that, Shoto. However, you shouldn't sell yourselves short. Yes, the three of you were at each other's throats at the beginning, but in time, you came together to eventually conquer the test. Izuku, now flat on his back, turned his head toward the unconscious Bakugo. Yeah, but who knows if that'll be any easier in the future. All Might strolled up and placed a hand on Izuku's shoulder. That's up to you to make possible, young Midoriya. Hearts and minds can't be changed in a day, but personally, I think you've made some great progress with young Bakugo. The hero eyed the unconscious blonde. It'll take more time for him to fully come around, but in the end, I'm sure it'll be worth the effort. I really hope you're right, All Might. Izuku sighed, staring up at the ceiling. Still, it's pretty crazy how much has happened this school year, you know. Indeed, Optimus concurred, scanning his eyes across the room at the boys. Many of you found your weaknesses and learned to move past them. Others learned what it really takes to be a hero. Some of you tasted failure, struggled with your own powerlessness, but then moved toward bright, new goals, overcoming your past letdowns. He then nodded to Izuku and Shoto. These feelings might be bittersweet, but I hope you learn well from them. Shoto couldn't help but agree. You're right, Prime. Thanks for the advice. Izuku, meanwhile, was slightly amused. Advice in the form of a speech. Yeah, that's what Prime's best at, alright. He's got you there, my friend. All Might laughed heartily. Optimus could only offer a shrug. Well, what can I say? I've had eons of practice. Knock knock knock. At that moment, everyone's attention was brought to the door that led to the monitor room, much to their astonishment. That's odd. I thought everyone was going to meet us outside. Prime approached the door and opened it, only to see his lieutenant on the other side. Jazz. Yo, Prime, Jazz started hesitantly, rubbing his neck all the while. You guys all set up in here. His brow furrowed in confusion. Optimus glanced back to the boys on the bed, who were equally as perplexed. All Might also had a brow raised, prompting Optimus to respond, I suppose, for the most part. Izuku's back has straightened out and Shoto says he can walk fine on his own. Is something the matter? A wince formed on Jazz's holoform features. You could say that. But that ain't something we should talk about in here. Come meet us outside and we'll explain. On that note, Jazz's holoform disappeared, taking the others off guard. That doesn't seem normal, All Might noted. Yeah, Jazz seemed nervous about something. Shoto brought a ponderous hand to his chin. I wonder what? Prime's holoform lips tightened. Something was up, he knew that for sure. It wasn't like Jazz to skirt around an issue like that, especially with him. There's only one way to find out, apparently. All Might, give Izuku some help. We're headed out. However, Izuku was keen on getting out on his own. No, Optimus, I'm good. Promise. He began rolling onto his side, reaching a foot down to the floor. Watch, I'll just take it one step at a time. Crash. Upon falling, the sound of Izuku's impact was enough to startle Bakugo awake, the explosive blonde snapping his eyes open before whipping up into a seated position. What the, where, how? Once he took in his surroundings, the first thing he noticed was that he wasn't on the test field anymore, and his teammates and opponents were all around him, the former two just as battered and bruised as he was. What's going? Young Bakugo, congratulations. All Might announced with his arms raised. You passed, boy. I did. Then we managed to. Katsuki trailed off when he saw Izuku sprawled across the floor, earning a confused glare from him. Deku, what the hell are you doing? Izuku eyed him irritably. Sorry if me being on the ground is an inconvenience to you, I only had my back thrown out trying to get to the finish line. He managed to get up on his hands and knees before sitting up. I also came back to get you guys so that we'd all get high marks on the practical, so you're welcome for that. Bakugo's lips curled into a sneer. What? Deku, you bastard, I wanted to go out fighting. With a deadpan look, Izuku rolled his eyes and retorted. Should have known a simple, thank you, would be off the table. He hoisted himself up, his knees shaking while his back ached. Listen, you can grumble all you want, but the fact is that we all passed in the end. You want to complain about how, then fine, but just know that I'm not gonna let what you say bother me anymore. He furrowed his brow at the still glaring Katsuki, though he could tell that his former friend was also somewhat surprised. Now, if you'll excuse me, I've gotta go get changed. Yeah, so do I. Shoto echoed, standing up as well. It's getting late, anyway. The two proceeded toward the door, with Shoto waving over his shoulder. See you around, Bakugo. As the two boys departed, Katsuki was left stunned and angry, and he couldn't tell which was more palpable at the moment. He clenched his fists in his lap, his frustration growing by the second. Since when did he start growing a pair? He growled under his breath. I'd say it was when he finally had it with you. To All Might's astonishment, it was Orion who said that, the Autobot leader stepping up to Katsuki's bed. Young man, Izuku has told me much about your history, and I must say, I'm not impressed with what I've heard. TCH, Bakugo glanced away. Seems like he's just telling everyone now. It's a miracle I haven't been expelled or something. Because Izuku still vouched for you. That managed to get a double take out of the explosive blonde. Huh, what are you? Orion shook his head in disappointment. It seems you still don't comprehend what's going on, young Bakugo. You and Izuku may not like one another, but there's a big difference between the two of you that gives Izuku the higher moral ground. He still holds respect for you. You, meanwhile, have no respect for him, even though he now has a quirk. He narrowed his gaze at the stunned boy. Your sense of superiority over everyone else is what will ultimately hold you back from achieving true greatness. And your constant, festering anger will only ensure that. I knew someone like that who succumbed to such anger. Prime backed away from Bakugo's bed, keeping his head held high. I suggest that you seriously think about what road you should take going forward, lest you end up like how he did. And with that, Orion made his way toward the door, leaving All Might to try and wrap things up. Ahem, well, I also suggest that you take what Orion has said to heart, young Bakugo. Next semester will only bring more challenges, after all, and many of them you can't face on your own. He gave Katsuki a final nod as he followed the Autobot leader out the door. Remember, hero school or not, this is still a place of learning. And it's clear that you still have much of that to do. On that last note, Katsuki Bakugo was left by himself, pondering everything that he had just been told. Looking down at his hands, he clenched his teeth and tried to block their words out, only for them to keep coming to the forefront of his mind. No matter how much it made him angry, he couldn't deny that what Orion said has struck a chord. God damn it, why, though? He clenched his head and fell back to his pillow. Why the hell do I feel so inspired by that guy? Gah, it feel too damn weird. Ah, good, you're awake. His head shot back up once Recovery Girl entered the room, giving him a kind smile. I was told by the others that you were doing well. How do you feel, young man? Confused. Katsuki admitted, his eyes shifting down. Completely fucking confused. Once the boys got themselves changed, they, along with Optimus and All Might, went out to the UA parking lot to see what was going on. As expected, they were greeted by the sight of the rest of their friends along with the Autobots, though strangely, they were all huddled together in a group for some reason. And none of the bots were using their holoforms either, even though they were still in vehicle mode. Prime's suspicions were raised all the more once he saw the students' apprehensive smiles. Everyone, he greeted first. What is going on? Hey, Prime. Kyoka chuckled nervously. You'll, never guess what we're about to tell you. Kyoka. Izuku tilted his head. You guys alright? Tenya raised his arms, stiffly waving them up high. Never better, Midoriya. We're all quite well, thank you for asking. Absolutely nothing is making us worry out of our minds. Iida, everybody, would you just move so I can talk to them, please? The sound of a certain croaky voice took Prime, All Might, Izuku and Shoto aback, while the others collectively winced. Hesitantly, the students parted down the middle, allowing none other than Tsuyu Asui to step forward. Midoriya, Todoroki. She nodded to her classmates first before bowing to her teacher. All Might, sir. The number one hero was still baffled. Young Asui, what brings you here? I'm here because I need to talk to him. Sue craned her head around, her expression unreadable as she faced Orion Pax. Mr. Optimus Prime, I presume. And just like that, everything started clicking into place, with Shoto and Izuku audibly gasping while All Might's eyes widened. Optimus himself, however, kept himself reserved enough to keep the act up. I don't ever recall telling you about my code name, Miss Asui, he replied with a tilt of his head. How did you guess? Sue just shook her head. I didn't. A friend of mine told me. She pointed directly at him. Also, you can drop the act. I know the whole deal about the Autobots. Now that managed to truly take Optimus off guard, causing his head to snap directly to his team in shock. It wasn't S. Prime. Sideswipe assured. We didn't slip up, we swear. RC echoed. She told us she knew from the moment you transformed. Bulkhead added, his voice filled with trepidation. Apparently, she's known about it for a long time. Needless to say, Optimus was quite surprised. I see. That is the truth, then. ZRKT, it's the truth, ZRKT, the whole truth and nothing but the truth. Bumblebee swore through his radio. Red Alert rolled his way over to his leader, saying, Optimus, believe me when I say that you'll want to hear what Miss Asui has to say. I could be our biggest lead yet. Optimus raised his brow toward Sue. Very well, it seems that you know about us. I would very much appreciate to know how, though. He saw the young girl swallow her nervousness before pressing on. Right. Truth is, Optimus Prime, sir, I found another of your kind not too long ago. That managed to make the commander do a double take, along with All Might and Shoto. Izuku, meanwhile, felt his jaw unhinge from shock. What? Asui, you found an Autobot. Yes, and I told you to call me, Sue. The frog girl reminded before shifting her focus back to the matter at hand. But Optimus Prime, sir, believe me when I say that I don't intend on revealing anything to anyone. The only others who know anything about it are members of the agency I interned under, no one else. This occurred during your internship, Optimus pondered that before going back to his medic. Red Alert, I want you to run a complete scan of the area. See if there are any remaining students on the school grounds. Without even saying anything, Red Alert complied with the order, his windshield projecting a holographic screen that showed the progress of the scan. Once it reached the end, the screen switched off and he concluded, scan complete. The only ones remaining on school grounds are teachers and other school staff, Optimus. We're in the clear. Good. Autobots, transform. Ochako reached out, taking her froggy friend by the shoulder. Sue, you're gonna want to step back for this. *WHRRTSCHZZTSCHZZTSCHZZCHKT. As she complied with her friend's advice, Tsuyu Asui was left completely wide-eyed and slack-jawed, watching as the first 9 Autobots transformed into their robot modes. And once Jazz, Bulkhead, Sideswipe, Sunstreaker, Strongarm, Bumblebee, RC, Windblade and Red Alert were all standing, that's when Prime's holoform disappeared and he transformed as well, towering over the humans at first before kneeling down to their level. Tsuyu was completely at a loss for words, except for one astounded, ribbit. Optimus nodded down to her. I can see that you're surprised. Now, if you would be so kind, please, tell us what you know, Miss Asui. Sure, and please, call me, Sue. Clearing his vents, Prime corrected himself, right, Sue. Of course. With all eyes on her, the frog girl began recounting her story. Like I said, it was during my internship under Selkie's agency. We were on a job and things had just gotten pretty hairy. 3 weeks ago, Tsuyu Asui, aka the rainy season hero, Frappy, had hoped that this sudden mission would allow her to show what she could do. Of course, her mentor for the week, Selkie, had tempered her expectations at every turn, saying that she was to simply observe and only help where needed. However, given that he had been captured and was currently stuck at the bottom of a rogue fishing boat, a different approach had to be made. So that led her and one of his sidekicks to investigate some strange goings-on at a pair of large rocks that were sticking up out of the ocean, which, as it turned out, led them to exactly what they were searching for, the villain. Unfortunately, though, this villain had been prepared, and launched an attack almost as soon as they found out. The bad guy in question had an octopus quirk, giving him long tentacles and spongy, reddish skin. Two of his tentacles doubled as two pairs of arms, with webbed hands at their ends. The other two sets were his main pair of legs, and a pair that protruded right out of his face under his big, bulgy eyes. He was also decked out in baggy clothes and a hood, making him look like a real thug. Haha. And here I thought I'd gotten away with it. The villain guffawed, having gained the upper hand as he loomed over Froppy on his boat. You idiots just won't give up, now will you? How sad, a girl and some kid are all that's left to stop me. Said girl was a young woman with short blue hair, wearing a quite white and blue sailor's uniform. She also had a pair of accessories over her ears, which in actuality were communicators that were styled to resemble blue fish fins. Her name was Sirius, and she was in a pretty precarious position, wrapped up in one of the villain's long arms. But, even so, she wasn't defenseless, pulling out a collapsible baton from her fanny pack before swinging it at her captor. HYA, ah. Unfortunately, the weapon was slapped out of her hand within a second. And following that, the villain began to tighten his hold around her, bringing his hand up to her face. Sue was about to jump to her aid, but the villain caught sight of her before she could. Not so fast. I'll give her back just as soon as the Coast Guard calls off their search. But first, you're gonna help me unload the cargo, got it? Froppy knew exactly what that cargo was, too, illegal drugs. I've gotta find some way to get out of this, but how? *CHZZ, sorry, our transmission was blocked. All of a sudden, everyone's attention was brought to Selkie's earpiece as one of the captain's other sidekicks chimed in. We're still stuck on the fishing boat, but the captain made it out. How are things on your end? Tell me your status. Please respond. Unable to reach the comm, Sirius could do nothing but struggle as the villain reached up and plucked her earpiece off. I see. So this is actually a radio, huh? His cephalopod features took on what could only be described as a smirk, before bringing the comm closer to Sue. Here you go, kid. If you value this woman's life, then repeat what I say. Unfortunately, we weren't able to track down the stowaways. Got it? No. Froppy, don't do it, MPH. Sirius was promptly silenced as the villain pushed his hand over her mouth. Sirius. Sue cried out, only for the bad guy to keep pressuring her. Hurry up now. Despite his insistence, though, Sue was still hesitant, which only made him goad her even further. Oh, I see. You don't care what happens to your friend here, do you? Froppy tightened her lips, her eyes glancing between the device, the villain, and Sirius. Well, come on. Get to it. Eventually, though, Sue's gaze locked with Sirius' pleading eyes, and she remembered something that the blue-haired sailor had told her earlier that day. The captain is relying on us to follow his orders. If we believe in him, then we trust his course of action. Do you have faith, Froppy? Ultimately, She-Frog Girl lowered her head toward the comm. I get it now. Without wasting another moment, she reached out, touched the call button, and said loud and clear, the stowaways are at the double rocks. The octopus man was galled, while Sirius was relieved and grateful. Thank you so Mew. However, in his rage, the villain slammed Sirius straight toward the deck, knocking her for a loop before leaping at Sue in anger. You stupid little brat. He swung his arm down, intent on slamming it straight on her head, only for Froppy to start hopping between the double rocks. I'll kill you. Grah. No matter how many times he swung, though, he just couldn't seem to land a hit. She just kept bounding every which way. Stop jumping around and stay still, damn it. Eventually, though, the villain found his opening when Sue lashed her tongue out to scoop up Sirius, wherein he quickly grabbed it and yanked her toward one of the rocks. Yes. Now I've got you. He proceeded to swing her straight into the stone and dragged her straight through it until she hit a branch. It snapped off, naturally, but something else happened. A hairline fracture where the branch once was began to steadily increase in size, even more so as the villain leapt up and crashed onto the outcropping, pinning Sue beneath his foot. "This is the end, Froppy. You're just a helpless child." He began reaching out, intending to smother her with just his hand. "But, since you came here uninvited, I'll have to teach both of you a lesson, huh?" Splash * crash. From out of nowhere, something, or rather, some things, came rocketing out from the sea and careened right into the rock, forcing the villain to jump out of their way. As it would happen, these things were actually a pair of squid men in matching red and blue fishing gear, who went falling back into the water while crying their eyes out. "Boss!" they screamed. "My brothers!" the octopus exclaimed, without noticing that the fracture on the rock had grown bigger. *FWOOSH. Ribbit. Froppy croaked in relief as another figure breached through the water, landing on the rock face. He was a muscular, 6.5 foot tall seal man, complete with gray skin, dark speckles on his head, and whiskers growing out of his pudgy cheeks. He also had a scruffy white beard and red markings around his eyes, and he wore a blue and white wetsuit with a pair of yellow goggles on his head. "Captain." Captain Selkie sent his intern a reassuring grin and a salute. "Sorry for being late. Leave the rest to me." He turned to confront the octopus villain, only to get a face full of ink, obstructing his vision. "Gah. Think again." The cephalopod man launched himself at Selkie, ready to deliver a hard punch, only for the hero to deftly dodge while clicking his tongue. One of the benefits of Selkie's quirk, Spotted Seal, is that he could use echolocation to know his surroundings. Whether that was in the deepest sea, or in a fight. You think you can use cheap tricks to win? Well, I've got news for you. After vaulting off the villain's back, Selkie landed against the other rock and rebounded back, shouting, "You can't hide, villain. You bastard." Using all 6 of his free tentacles, the villain launched a barrage of punches upon Selkie, but to his chagrin, he was able to counter them all. And then, from behind, Selkie grabbed onto his leg. Caption. "Now!" she screamed. Rearranging himself in midair, Selkie went for a flying kick. It's over. Even though he was caught off guard, however, the villain wasn't about to go out so easily. Never. Using his 2-faced tentacles, he wrapped them around Selkie's extended leg and swung him straight into one of the massive rocks, the same one that already had been cracked. That would end up being the final straw as the massive formation broke and gave way. Froppy let out a gasp and went to jump to safety, lashing her tongue out to grab Selkie and throw him away from the hazard zone. "Captain." "Gah. Froppy, watch out for the, huh." However, whatever the captain was about to say died in his throat as he noticed something strange about how the formation was falling. Namely that, something seemed to be inside of it. Sure enough, most of the rock wound up crumbling into the ocean, leaving a gigantic, metal, thing behind. Everyone, hero and villain alike, were completely baffled by its presence as it fell into the water, making a beeping noise all the while. Error. Error. Stasis pod damage too extensive. Awakening occupant. The pod began to list onto its side only to flip over entirely, right as it was opening up. And then, it sank into the ocean depths, leaving everyone scared and cautious. What was that? The villain shouted. Is this some sort of trick? At this point, the ink had washed out of Selkie's eyes, and he glared at the bad guy. I'm just as lost as you are, villain, but that doesn't matter. He extended a hand toward his intern, warning her to stay back. Froppy, leave this to me, huh. But just then, the surface of the water began to bubble, and then it began to move upward. Before long, whatever was coming up finally breached, accompanied by a familiar sound. Auga, 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 asterisk. As the alarm rang through the dead of night, the group were left completely bewildered and speechless at the sight before them. Towering over their heads was a massive bipedal being made of what appeared to be metal, standing about as tall as a 4-story building. They couldn't really make out much detail of the being's body, but it was clear that it was entirely robotic, given not only its immense size, but also how its eyes glowed an unearthly shade of blue behind its built-in visor. The only other notable detail they could see were the protrusions coming out of its shoulders, each having large propellers mounted on them. However, Sue noticed something else about it once it came out of the water. It was barely able to stand up. There were several points across its body where the metal armor had been torn up and ripped apart. She wasn't sure if the injuries were from what had just happened or from something else, but it was clear that, whatever this was, it was in pain. And seeing it double over and let out a groan only assured her of that. "WWW, what in the world is that?" the octopus villain exclaimed, quickly scrambling to get away from the scene. "Get me outta here." No. Stop, villain. Thankfully, his attempted escape is what got Selkie out of his stupor and he quickly gave chase, only for the robot to notice as well. The seafaring hero gasped as it reached out and brought its hand down onto the villain, imprinting a massive handprint into the now cleared-out island, with a villain-shaped indent underneath. Even so, the villain was still alive, seeing as his body was still twitching in pain. As the bot brought its hand back, it peered down at the small humans below, scanning its optics across them before asking in a low, gurgling voice, "Excuse me, do you know where I am? Or even who I am?" Hi, present. And that's basically it, Sue concluded. The story had only taken about 10 minutes to recount, but even so, the group of humans and Autobots hung on to every word. It was certainly a fantastic tale, and it managed to make them all very excited. "Whoa, so an Autobot helped you take down those drug traffickers?" Izuku said, his eyes shining in awe. "That's amazing." "Yeah, but as you can imagine, Captain Selkie had us all keep it a secret," Sue reminded. "Completely understandable." Strongarm nodded. "After all, best not to attract too much attention when it comes to finding an Autobot trapped in a rock." Sunstreaker, though, was incredibly confused. But how did their stasis pod even end up in there in the first place? "Seems like an odd spot, don't you think?" Red Alert had an explanation. "My best guess would be that their pod got caught in a landslide of some kind millions of years ago, and from there, the stone solidified around it and was then pushed up out of the sea by continental shift." He craned his head toward Optimus. "Sir, if what Suyu says is true, then it's imperative that we locate this Autobot and retrieve them. We need to give them proper repairs. And if their memory is fractured, then I'll need to use my cortical psychic patch to help them, too." Windblade added. "I agree." Optimus concurred. "Though that does lead me to wonder," he raised an eyelash down to Sue. "If this Autobot's memory core is damaged, then how did you know about us?" The frog girl tapped the side of her head. "He's been able to piece a few things together over these past few weeks. We've been helping him along as best we can, but most he's able to remember was that he's an Autobot from Cybertron under your command, and was sent to Earth on a ship for some reason. That reason being to bring Energon, the lifeblood of their race, back to Cybertron." Momo revealed to Suyu. "Your bot was likely part of the crew of the Ark, which crash-landed on this world millions of years ago." Tenya explained further. "Suyu, this may come as a shock to you, but the Autobots are currently in a war with a different group of Cybertronians, the Decepticons. All who defy them and their leader, Megatron, are sought to be destroyed." "A bit on the nose with the name there," Sue commented. "But that certainly sounds pretty bad. So why did this ship need to come to Earth to find this, Energon, stuff?" "Because our planet's supply is running out," Optimus revealed. "For a time, the core of Cybertron flowed with enough Energon to satisfy everyone, but once the war broke out, Megatron and the Decepticons began to hoard it to power their weapons." He raised his hand to the sky, which began to darken as the sun set. "We knew, however, that Energon could grow on different planets, so we sent the Ark out on an expedition to find more and bring it back so that we could revitalize our world. ZRKT, and now, ZRKT, here we are," Bumblebee concluded. Just then, Mina brightened up as a thought occurred to her. "So, wait, if we can help this bot out, then maybe we'll be one step closer to finding the Ark." "It's a strong possibility," Red affirmed. "And it'll be even better if we can recover his pod." "Well then, what are we waiting for?" Denki clapped his hands together. "Let's go get him." Eijiro, however, tried to temper his friend's expectations. "Whoa there, dude, hold on just a sec. We don't even know where this bot is yet." "Not far, actually," Sue piped up, placing a finger on her chin. "Captain Selkie's keeping him bunked up at his agency in Shizuoka City. He's had to keep the Oki Mariner floating on the water while Big C takes up her dock." I'm sorry, Big C," Kyoka inquired. "Oh, that's what we've been calling him." Sue spread her arms out for emphasis. Ya know, because he's big and he came out of the sea. The group exchanged odd looks to one another before the frog girl clarified further, it was the captain's idea. Kata laughed awkwardly while rubbing her neck. Hee hee, yeah, I thought it was a bit on the nose. She ultimately shook her head, getting back on track. But this is great. We know exactly where the big guy is, so let's go help him, huh? Optimus was quick to agree. I couldn't have said it any better myself, Kata. Autobots, transform and roll out. All at once, the bots transformed once again, which only made Suyu even more amazed. Once their holoforms appeared, RC pulled up and opened her door for her and Ochako. So, Sue, you up for a little drive in an Autobot? I am, thank you. Sue nodded before she went to climb into the back, only for Ochako to correct her and put her in the passenger side. This is your first time. The brunette insisted before climbing in the back herself. You get shotgun. Ribbit, Sue croaked sheepishly as her seatbelt automatically locked in place. As Prime took the lead with All Might in his passenger's seat, the Autobots rolled out of the UA parking lot, the #1 hero taking the opportunity to revert back to his skinny form. Thank God, that was a lot to keep up. Toshinori breathed a sigh of relief. Can't believe I've been like this all day. I think those weights actually ended up conserving some of my energy for me. Optimus holoform grinned to his friend. Perhaps. Though I wouldn't count out your force of will, All Might. No matter how old you get, that's something that never goes away. Hee, I appreciate the words of encouragement. The blonde man chortled before shifting back to the topic of the hour. So, if this Autobot was found in Japan, you think any of the other pods could be here, too? It's a distinct possibility. The Prime nodded. If that's the case, however, then it's imperative that we not only aid our comrade, but also recover the remains of his stasis pod. If we can salvage its internal computer, it may very well lead us to the Ark. The symbol of peace hummed thoughtfully. Then if that's the case, we've not a moment to lose. Let's roll. Meanwhile, on the bridge of the dark side, a certain general was quietly seething to himself. Unicronus had absolutely aggravated at how easily Starscream had lucked out in getting back into Megatron's good graces. He could kiss any chance of leading this mission by himself goodbye with that ruling, and all because the Seeker had managed to capture a relatively useful Decepticon deserter who just so happened to have good connections. It was enough to make his energon boil, and on top of that, the away team were now more likely to go directly to Starscream instead of him because of his seniority. That damned screamer, Unicronus clenched his fist and struck it upon the center console, not caring if he broke it or not. I swear to the pit that I will take your place. I am the actual competent one on this ship, I should be the one giving the General Unicronus, sir. What? Whipping around, Unicronus glared down at the Viacon informant, who flinched at the sudden outburst. Realizing what he did, the general composed himself as best he could, clearing his vents and standing up straight. Report. The Viacon saluted while stammering what he had to say. Why yes, sir. Our scanners have picked up several Autobot signatures on the move across the Japanese coastline. Unicronus furrowed his metal brow, turning back to the central console. That's so. On screen. Upon his order, a large holoscreen appeared before him, showing a map of Japan. There, at least 9 Autobot energy signatures could be seen moving across the Shizuoka prefecture to the eastern seaboard, which he found very interesting. Odd. What could justify all of this activity? The Autobots don't often move in a group this big in Japan, they normally stay in smaller ones. Makes them harder to track. At the moment, we don't know, sir. The Viacon lowered his head. Must be something important if it means this many bots going. Unicronus perked his head up as Swift entered the room, with Barricade by her side. Maybe a new relic. Or a mini-con. Barricade shrugged. At this point, I wouldn't be surprised by either. However, the general shook his head. If it was a mini-con, our own sensors would have picked it up by now, but I ain't about to rule out a relic. He pointed toward the green femme. Swift, take a battalion of Viacons and go pay the Autobots a little visit. Swift, however, was hesitant. You sure? Starscream ain't back yet and I'm pretty sure he'll wanna. Exactly. Unicronus growled, stepping closer to loom over her. Starscream isn't back yet. But guess what? I'm still co-commander, so either follow my orders or I'll confine you to quarters until further notice. Am I clear? Despite how much she wanted to tell him off, Swift reserved to grit her metal teeth and comply. Yes, sir. On that note, she spun around on her heel and marched out, murmuring expletives under her breath the whole way. She looked back to Barricade briefly, and his sympathetic gaze was enough to make her relax, at least somewhat, before fully leaving. Whatever this is, it'd better be worth it. Back in Japan, the team had just arrived in Shizuoka City as night fell, making a beeline toward the port the moment they got there. Not long ago, Sue had actually called ahead to inform the Oki Mariner crew about their arrival, and from the sounds of it, they were quite excited. Sirius is really interested to meet all of you, she said while smiling at Sadie. I think you'll like her. She's great. And Captain Selkie is an amazing hero. I don't doubt it, RC replied. Anyone who's willing to take in a damaged Autobot, even without knowing their origin, is certainly a great hero in my eyes. As the minutes passed, the buildings began to become fewer and far between, before eventually the group had a full view of the expansive ocean. I have to say, though, Sue, I'm surprised that these villains that you stopped didn't say anything at all about the Autobot who helped stop them. A small, amused grin formed on Sue's features. Oh, that's because the police thought that they were all spouting crazy nonsense. After all, who would believe a giant robot of all things would just come out of the ocean like that? Ochako could only shrug in the back. Yeah, that's fair. Pretty sure anyone would think the same if they heard that, without having actually seen the Autobots, that is. Hey, yeah, RC trailed off as Optimus and the others ahead of them began to slow to a stop, turning into an empty lot with a sign above it that read, Oki Mariner Hero Agency. I'm guessing that this is the place, then. You're up, Sue. Ribbit, as the Autobots all pulled to a stop in the parking lot, Sue was the first to climb out, craning her head around searching for the crew. Thankfully, that didn't take very long. Froppy. Hey, you made it. Across the way, Sue spotted the familiar young woman who called out to her, smiling as she waved her over. Sirius. Hi. Sue hopped over RC's hood to meet the blue-haired woman directly. Glad that you guys didn't close for the day yet. Oh, you know the captain doesn't like to close until late. Sirius winked. You would have had plenty of time. As the other students climbed out of their respective bots, they were able to take in the lady's appearance themselves, and a certain electric blonde was quite stunned. Whoa-ho, dude, look at HER. Denki muttered, nudging Ajiro in the shoulder. That sailor outfit has to be the cutest thing I've ever seen on a girl. Yeah, it's cute, but she is way out of all our leagues, the spiky redhead stated. The declaration made Denki grimace gloomily. Sad thing is, you're totally right. Sirius perked up when she saw the other students, smiling to all of them. Oh, and these must be your friends. She gave a welcoming bow to the teens. It's a pleasure to meet all of you. Any friend of Froppy is a friend to us here at the Oki Mariner Hero Agency. Welcome. Bowing back, the students reciprocated with a united, thank you very much. Then, Izuku continued from there. Sue's told us a lot about you all, too. And thanks very much for keeping this Autobot safe, by the way. And how do you know about the Autobots, son? All at once, everyone stiffened up at the sound of a gruff voice from further away, drawing their eyes up to see none other than Selkie approaching them. The spotted seal man scanned his eyes across the crowd, noting each and every one of the kids. In fact, I could ask all of you kids that. Froppy, you're sure these friends of yours are on the up and up? They are, Captain Selkie, sir. Sue responded without batting an eye, even though most of her friends were feeling somewhat intimidated by the gruff man. They've already known about the Cybertronians, much longer than we have, in fact. She's right, sir. Tenya assured, placing a hand over his chest. We can promise you, we are trustworthy. Selkie, however, raised a skeptical brow. That's so. And how exactly have you known about the giant alien robots? As if to answer, the kids all turned to Optimus. Prime, you wanna take this one? Kyoka asked. He's probably not gonna be convinced until he hears it from you in All Might. Of course. Optimus obliged, his voice making Selkie and Sirius do a double take as he rolled forward. His passenger door opened up, allowing All Might to quickly buff back up and hop out to greet the two. Aha! I am here to extend our gratitude to you both. Needless to say, both of the seafaring heroes were astonished. All Might, they exclaimed, with Sirius snapping her head toward Suyu. Froppy, you didn't mention anything about All Might in your call. Su simply gave a cheeky grin. I know. I just wanted to see your faces when you realized he was in on this, too. Ahahaha. And quite the expressions you have, too. All Might laughed again, coming forward to give the captain a salute. But genuinely, Captain Selkie, thank you so much for keeping the Autobots' presence here a secret from the public. It genuinely means so much to the other bots and myself that our secret is still in safe hands. Selkie hastily saluted back. Oh, of course, All Might, sir. And might I add, it's a privilege to have you here at my agency. I mean, I knew that you taught it, but never did I think you'd know about the Autobots. He promptly shifted his focus back to the children with a sheepish grin. And to all of you, sorry if I put any of you off back there. I was only being cautious, you know. When it comes to a secret this big, you can't be too careful. That's perfectly understandable, Captain Selkie, sir. Momo affirmed, only to glance back to the rest of their group. After all, considering how many of us here found out about the Autobots by accident, it's no wonder you'd go to such lengths. Ha ha ha, is that so? Selkie guffawed, his hand going to the back of his head. Well then, guess I really did have nothing to worry about, and then, the seal man did something odd. He brought his hands close to his chin and sent them all a big, toothy grin while squinting his eyes. Forgive me, he said in baby talk. The results were expectedly mixed. Most of the guys, along with Keita, Kyoka and Momo, all cringed uncomfortably at the face. Meanwhile, Su, Ochako and Mina were given pause by his behavior, as were the Autobots. What's that? Bulkhead piped up. In response, Sirius groaned and smacked her captain on the shoulder. That is the captain's unsuccessful attempt at being cute. Come on, Sirius. Selkie implored, practically tilting his whole body to one side. You still don't think this is endoing? No it isn't. The blue-haired woman pointed directly at him, her brow twitching all the while. All it does it make people feel weirded out, and even little kids just point and laugh at you. I still can't believe this has to be pointed out. Little did Selkie know, however, that his cuteness had managed to garner some admirers. Adorable. Su, Ochako and Mina all thought in unison, the former having already seen the display before. Still, the frog girl knew that they couldn't waste any more time. They had to get this done. Anyway, could we get some of these bots inside so that we can fix up Big C? Selkie's eyes widened, remembering the situation. Oh, yes, of course. He reached into his wetsuit and aimed it toward the agency building, causing a garage door to open up. My agency building serves both as an office and a dock for the Oki Mariner. Big C is down below, though, so only a few of you can really come in, I'm afraid. Down below, you say. Right at that moment, Windblade flew down from out of the sky, coming in for a landing much to the shock of the sailors. Well then, I'm not going anywhere down there like this. Prime, I've checked the area, the coast is clear. Thank you, Windblade. Optimus said before giving the command, Autobots, you may assume robot mode, but keep a low profile. And be ready to transform at any moment in case anyone comes around. WHRRTSCHZZTSCHZZTSCHZZCHKT*. With this instruction, the Autobots all transformed into robot mode, with some crouching down and remaining low behind the massive wall that separated the port from the main street. And of course, Sirius and Selkie were completely awestruck. Oh my gosh, the former covered her mouth with her hand. So that's how they do it. Big C said you were capable of doing this, but seeing it with my own eyes is just crazy. Selkie added, craning his head up to the kneeling Optimus. That said, again, I can probably only fit a handful of you inside. That is fine, Captain. Optimus assured. I will likely be one of those few. Considering that, Big C seems to remember me, he might find my presence reassuring. He raised a finger while adding, but we do have one more Autobot we have to wait for. He should be here, right now. The sudden bright green flash of light alerted everyone to the ground bridge opening up nearby, making the sailors' jaws drop. Stepping through the portal came none other than Signal Flare, equipped once again with his Energon transfusion pack attached to his arm apparatus. He was also carrying a large toolbox in one hand, and, riding in on his shoulder, was a certain mad inventor. "Hey, everyone," May announced their arrival. "Sorry if we kept you waiting." Signal Flare continued. "Had to make sure we got everything." Optimus shook his head, however. "Don't worry, Signal Flare, you're right on time. We were just about to get started." The blue Autobot leaned down, allowing May to safely hop off his shoulder and jog toward her friends. She raised her hands with a happy smile and said, "Hey. Heard you guys smashed those practical exams. Congrats." "Hee, thanks, Hatsume." Izuku reciprocated. "But let me tell you, it wasn't easy." "Well, I don't doubt it." "Boo it," the pink-haired girl put on a knowing smirk, wiggling her eyebrows up and down. "Did my babies at least help a little bit? Surely they had to make things at least a bit easier for ya." At first, the group were confused, but then Kata remembered, "Oh yeah. Your weighted band thingies. Yeah, I say they helped big time." "Agreed," Shoto affirmed. "Without them, we'd probably have been toast against All Might." Throwing his head back, the number one hero laughed and went over to May, patting her on the shoulder. "Ha ha ha. Young Hatsume, you continue to impress everyone with every invention you make. It's no wonder the faculty's been putting a good word in for you." He sent her a knowing wink. "Watch this space, because I've got a feeling that they've got big plans cooking for you." May was bouncing back and forth on the balls of her feet in her excitement. Hey. Yes, soon the whole world will know exactly what my babies can accomplish." However, she clapped her hands together to get back on track. "But, before that, we've got a bot to help. So, where is the big guy?" "He's in the main agency building over there," Sue pointed out. "Also, I didn't know you were in on this secret too, Hatsume." With her eyebrows raised, May pointed back at Suyu. "Oh yeah, you're that girl with the frog quirk from their class, right?" "Yes, my name's Suyu Asui. But please, call me Sue." Short, sweet and to the point." "Nice to meet ya, Sue." May jerked her thumb over to the building. "So, you wanna show us to your friend in there?" Just then, Selkie cleared his throat, interjecting himself into the conversation. "Ahem, young lady, this is my agency, so I'd be happy to show you in. Along with any other bots." May craned her head up to the Seal Man, her smile unwavering. "Huh. Alright then, Mr. Seal. Lead the way." The hero wore an incredulous expression, while behind him, Sirius had to hold back her laughter. "She always like this?" Selkie asked, glancing toward the students. "Most of the time, yeah." Mina shrugged. "But she's a good hand with tech and stuff." Selkie shrugged. "Well, if you say so. Froppy, you're comin' too, right?" Sue nodded without hesitation. "Of course, Ribbit." With Optimus, Windblade, Red Alert and Signal Flare taking point, the group began following Selkie and Sirius toward the building, with Sue giving the others a reassuring wave. "We'll be back, guys. It probably won't take long." May winked. "You just hang back and relax while we tinker with the big guy in there." With their friends waving them off, the group entered the main agency, only to find that it wasn't much of a typical agency at all. Of course, there were rooms with offices that were closer to the entrance, but the main building was taken up by a giant swimming pool that was filled to the brim with water. Needless to say, May was both intrigued and perplexed by the setup. What's with the giant pool? And where's the Autobot?" Selkie threw his head back and laughed. This is no pool, girl. This is the Oki Mariner's dock. When she's not in use, we put her in here. Though that said, we've had to keep her outside for a while since our guest is just under here." Selkie reached into his pocket and grabbed a remote control, pressing a big, red button in its center. Then, all at once, an alarm sounded off and the water began to drain from the dock, leaving it mostly dry before its bottom split open, revealing a rather large lift. "Shall we go down and see him?" Optimus was hesitant, but stepped onto the lift, finding that it could support his weight just fine. "What is this, Captain Selkie?" "Oh, just a little hidden elevator that I use to bring the Oki Mariner into my workshop. Gotta keep her in working condition, you know." Once all of the Autobots and the ladies were on, Selkie pressed another button and the lift began to descend. By the way, go easy on Big C, okay? He's had it pretty rough these past few weeks. Honestly, he looks worse and worse with each passing day. Don't worry, Captain, Signal Flare said, gesturing to the pack he was wearing. That's what this is for. Once we repair him and revitalize his energon levels, he should be right as rain. Sirius held her hand over her chest. I certainly hope so. It honestly feels like he's just slowly dying, and it's scary. May couldn't help but notice that Sue seemed to be shifting uncomfortably in place, making her tilt her head. Something wrong. Well, it's just, Big C and I have become really good friends. The thought of him dying without even fulfilling the mission he came here to do just never sat well with me. Sue replied with a small yet hopeful smile. But now, with you all here, he may have a chance to do that. Without a doubt. Windblade gave her a thumbs up. We'll make sure that he's okay, Suyu. Promise. On that note, the lift came to a halt at the bottom, leading the Autobots and humans to step off. Big C. Selkie called out into the dimly lit room. We've got a surprise for you. Sue hopped ahead of them all and shouted, you have guests, Big C. Come on, get up. From further in, the group heard a low, weak gurgling groan. MMPH, Captain. Sue. From the shadows, a rather large shape began to turn and sit up. And once it really got moving, the Autobots were left taken aback. Even sitting down, it was clear that the bot known as Big C was massive, peering down at all of them through his blue visor. And what's more, they all recognized him for who he really was. The moment Big C saw them, though, he gasped and focused in on the Autobot commander first. Why you, Optimus Prime? Beneath his faceplate, Optimus smiled and responded, yes, old friend. Your optics don't deceive you. I am really here. I can't believe it. Big C nearly got to his feet, but quickly found that wasn't agreeable with him right now. Gah, ow, ow. Whoa, easy big fella. Windblade raised her hand, trying to settle him down. Don't get up on our account. We're here to help you, after all. Reaching into her subspace storage, the city speaker took out her cortical psychic patch, showing it to him. And we're gonna start by getting your memory banks sorted out. Red Alert and Signal Flare stepped forward as well. And while she's doing that, we're going to give you some much needed repairs, the medic assured. Optimus came forward, reaching up and placing a reassuring hand on the big bot's chest. You're safe now, my friend. Though you've always been safe, I should say. He craned his head down to the Oki Mariner crew and Sue, who were all smiling happily. You had such trusted allies to take care of you in your moment of need. And now, it's time we got you back to being shipshape. Thank you, Big C said tiredly. You have no idea how glad I am to hear that. Meanwhile, as the minutes passed outside, the team decided to gather round and discuss how their practicals went, with many of them praising one another for their performances. Ishido, I've gotta say, I was really impressed with how you did out there. Izuku commended. The way you ate through Smentos's wall with your acid so quickly is a real testament to how you've improved your quirk. The compliment made Mina grin widely. Thanks, Midori. That means a lot. She nudged her chin back at him. And I can say the same for you. I still remember when you used to break your bones using your quirk. Indeed, and that is now a non-issue. Tenya said with aplomb. Well done, Midoriya. Izuku rubbed his neck sheepishly. Thanks guys, you're too kind. Kyoka elbowed her best friend encouragingly. Don't be so modest, dude. Take pride in what you pulled off. 'Cause lemme tell ya, even if he was handicapped, going up against All Might must have not been easy. However, the punk rocker shot him an annoyed eye. Even if he did also spring Optimus on you guys out of nowhere. Toshinori tried to laugh it off, having debulked himself again briefly. About that, sorry that I couldn't tell you. Though to be fair, it wasn't me who came up with the idea. You can thank your homeroom teacher and the principal for that one. However, Kyoka still wasn't impressed. But you still supported it, right? As much as he wanted to say no, Toshinori knew there was no way out of it. Yes. But please understand, he craned his head toward Izuku and Shoto. Your class is special in more ways than one. All of you are improving at an astounding rate, but when it comes to young Midoriya, Todoroki and Bakugo, let's just say that the faculty has recognized a pattern. His statement managed to leave the kids curious, to which he asked, "Are you all familiar with the big three of UA?" "Hi. Oh yeah, I have, actually." Keita raised her hand. "In fact, I met one of them during my internship at Yukyu's agency. She seemed nice, if a bit airheaded." Eijiro added in, "Yeah, and I think I've seen them walking the halls together a bunch, too. I've heard that they're all pretty powerful." "Exactly, and that's part of what earned them top marks as third-year students," Izuku affirmed. "Though I also heard that their training regimen is off the charts, too, at least in terms of one of them." "Oh, trust me, they all train intensively," All Might assured. "I've seen it in person, but of course, they'll be graduating next year. And by that time, that'll leave you all as second years." He focused on Izuku and Shoto. "And the faculty seems to expect you two and Bakugo will slip into the hole they'll leave behind." The boys eyed one another, trying to digest the information. "That's a lot to take in," Shoto said. "I know it is." A sigh passed Toshinori's thin lips. "But, realistically, it's the most likely outcome. Your performances at the sports festival only exemplify that. So, Aizawa wanted me and Prime to really test your mettle, to see if you three were ready for more intensive regimens yourselves." Kyoka couldn't help but purse her lips at the idea. "Don't you think you might be putting just a little bit more pressure on these guys than necessary?" The number one hero raised his hands defensively. "Hey, don't look at me. Like I said, you can thank Aizawa and the principal for that." Mina craned her head up toward the Autobots. "You guys have been pretty quiet about all this. Got any opinions?" "Hey, well, to be honest, I think it's a pretty stellar opportunity to be given," RC replied. "Yes, being at the top of your class is certainly a fine goal to reach for." Strongarm supported. "And considering just how potent those boys' quirks are, it's only natural that they'd be the ones to be scoped out." However, her optics widened before she corrected herself. "And not that your quirks are any less impressive, mind you." However, Tenya didn't see a problem with it. No, you are correct, Strongarm. As class representative, even I have to acknowledge when someone's quirk outclasses my own." He raised a closed fist with determination. "Besides, if anything, that only makes me wish to stride even further for success." "Exactly." Momo concurred. "More motivation to strengthen and improve our quirks so we don't get left behind is always a good thing." "Haha, that's the spirit." Bulkhead chuckled. "But back to this big three group, what are they like?" Beep 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 beep. All of a sudden, the Wrecker's comlink began going off, taking him off guard. "What the?" He reached up and pressed on the side of his helmet as he answered, "This is Bulkhead, go ahead." "Bulk." Flare-Up's voice could be heard clear as day on the other end. "Oh, thank the Maker, I finally got through. I've been trying to contact Prime for ages, but the transmission won't go through for some reason." Jazz cut into the conversation on his own comm. "Prime's gone underground with the others to fix up our mystery bot." "What's the sitch, Flare?" "We have an emergency. We're picking up dozens of Decepticon signatures headed your way by sea. Do you have visual?" Just like that, everyone was on high alert and up on their feet, their heads collectively swinging out toward the ocean. And, sure enough, out toward the horizon, they could see several incoming dark objects closing in on the shoreline. "Oh no," Denki uttered. On a scale of 1 to 10, Ochako squeaked out, "How bad is this?" "Run," Kyoka screamed, grabbing the brunette and Mina while shoving them away. Izuku followed suit, doing the same to Eijiro and Denki while Momo, Tenya, Keita and Shoto all booked it with them. Despite how exhausted he was, All Might found enough resolve to once again buff up into his muscle form, ushering the kids toward the harbor's entry gate. "Move, children, move." He snapped his head toward the Autobots, who began forming a line of defense across the parking lot. "Bulkhead, what are you doing? You all could get caught." Bulkhead shifted his arm into his pulse cannon, the rest of the Autobots bringing out their own weapons in the process. "Doesn't matter right now, All Might. The safety of our comrades in this city is what's most important. Take the kids in." Pa pow. However, the green Autobot didn't have time to finish as the Viacon battalion opened fire upon them all, a barrage of purple lasers raining down upon the port. The entire team, humans and Autobots, were sent scattering as several Viacons broke from the pack and transformed, aiming their blasters at the group as they landed. And then, came the maniacal laughter. Ahahaha. Well, well, well. From above, 3 small figures came jumping down from a Viacon that was passing by, revealing themselves as none other than the Destruction Minicon team. Ha ha ha. Looks like we caught ourselves a whole heap of bulks. Dueler guffawed. Hoo-hoo, you said it, boss. Landslide chortled. Now, time to really start the demolition derby. Drill Bit added, raising his drill arm to spin it threateningly. However, the arrival of whirling chopper blades brought everything to a halt, as a certain green Apache came hovering down before transforming into her robot mode. Now, boys, let's not get too hasty, Swift said with an insidious smirk. After all, we still gotta find out what they're up to. Strongarm managed to get herself up to her knees, glaring daggers at the lieutenant. Swift. Hey there, cadet. Long time, no fight. Swift waved off, narrowing her optics threateningly. So, wanna tell me what the beach party's all about? And remember, she motioned for Drill Bit to join her, and he power-linked into her arm without hesitation, his drill mode glowing green as it spun rapidly. Number wrong answers. And this of Season 2 Part 44 of This What If. Hope you guys like it.